Welcome back to Beyond Stereo, the Dolby Atmos podcast. I'm Dan Bucknell, and here we talk about the world of immersive technologies aimed at creating more meaningful and emotional experiences for music, film, and just about everything else. Today, I'm joined by Anthony Rodriguez, a Dolby Atmos mixing engineer and composer, talking about translating Dolby Atmos into the real world of consumer sound systems. Hello, how we going?
Doing good. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good, dude. Thanks for jumping on. Would you like to just introduce yourself maybe and tell people what you do, how you got started, and what it's all about for you?
Well, my name is Anthony Rodriguez from New Jersey, USA, and I am a musician, primarily a piano player and drummer, percussion. And my journey just goes into learning the percussion, the piano, off of necessity in the church, our home church, and just learning by ear. And then progressing into something more as I got older, met some friends that, were into music as well. And I'm really serious about that. And one was really into engineering, and he was able to convince his home church to invest and finance a studio in the church. So at that time it was the ADATs. So punching in was very important whenever we would record things. And from there, we just progressing into playing live music and playing with different bands and just moving forward. And then eventually, fast forward to today, 2025, I consider myself a music engineer because I work across the board, from making music to like mixing it and, stereo and Dolby Atmos now with the new technology in Dolby. So I'm able to provide the people I work with these types of formats that will kind of permit them to do whatever they need to do in their post-production. So
that's awesome.
But typical musician, and just investing in myself and just growing as the time passes.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think a lot of people probably do resonate with that because there's so many moving parts to this. There's you sort of can get lost in this of the sea of the internet that shows us all these really high end studios and stuff. And the whole point of that is that's super cool, but most people are not in those situations. And I think that it's a huge shame that people think that is what it where it works only, when there's just so many more things that we can do. I also love that you started with live. That's really cool. That was the same as me. Right. Wherever music exists, I'm there for it, man. And it sounds like you're the same.
Yeah, live music is such a beautiful feeling that you do not get in the studio. When you're playing live on the stage with the right artist, with the right people, and the crowd just kind of replies and responds to the artist. You feel that wave of love and vibes, and
absolutely,
it's nothing like live music,
Completely.
Right.
We've had a psychology kind of way of thinking about that on the podcast before with Matt Wickens. Go check out that episode if you want, guys. We were sort of talking a little bit about that, but I'd love to hear your perspective on that. So the whole idea of live and why that is different from the studio, because you can do a lot in a studio, but why is the live thing different for you?
The live thing, I grew up in that. So the live thing, it's like being thrown into the lion's den.
Yep.
Because when I first started, in my home church, there wasn't really organization in regards to preparing for a church service.
Right.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with like worship music.
Yeah, I used to play in a church band when I was a kid, actually, as well.
Back in the Latino community, every Sunday they would randomly pick somebody to lead, meaning singing, and there wasn't necessarily singers. There was just whoever wanted to sing, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so these events allowed me to kind of ear train myself, because I would have to find the key. We're talking like no one's telling you, hey, Daniel, we're going to play this song and we're going to do it in the key of G. None of that. It was like,
right, just
all right,
do it.
Let's go. So that gave me a lessons in ear training and finding the key of the song and learning and just getting through the songs and
that's really the deep end.
So
totally.
Yeah. And but there are also very special moments where I felt, when there was somebody that knew how to sing, and we were just playing a song that we all knew. It's a different feeling live because you're hearing all the sustains and all
Yeah.
the dynamics and the feel when someone, when they go from a peak, the peaks and valleys of a song, and you just go in there with it from playing drums, because I started drums and then I went to the piano.
That's awesome.
And then more on the advanced side, it's just the bass on stage, man. Bro, like when you play with a bass player, it's just like it holds the whole thing up on stage.
Completely.
And when you have a good sound system, when you have a good sound engineer,
Good monitoring too is important.
yes. But I gotta say, the thing that does suck about live music is majority of the time you don't have good sound systems.
It's true.
So I think that's the only thing that was kind of like the bad things of live music, because it was like, man, we have a $3,000 keyboard, a motif here,
Yeah.
and all this, and then the house speakers sound like garbage, and it's like, oh my god. But yeah,
I totally get it. I'm a drummer as well, and
Yeah.
I did play in a church band. I actually remember when you were talking about that, where sometimes when it just works and you really feel that. I have memories, and when you mentioned that, I was like, oh yeah, I can completely remember what that feels like in
Right.
that exact context as well, because sometimes it is kind of just like there's not as much organization, or you just don't have the resources really to
Yeah.
put on a professional show, but that's not really what it's about. So it's about that connection, I guess, with the community there, and singing these songs of worship is
Right.
the vibe. It's the point. More than the song being technically perfect played. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose that there's something to be said about that. But then again, like still as a musician, you want to feel something. You want to
Yeah.
connect with it even more, and that's really important. And when it does
Correct.
just work, that hits harder. I
Yeah.
completely recognize that feeling, and that's a magical thing. Super
Yeah.
cool.
But I've been blessed with having friends that were into recording studio.
Right.
Because it's dangerous to be 100% live, because then you're never gonna experience what a click track is. In today's world, we have multi tracks now. I'm not there, but a lot of these modern bands, they play with multi tracks. So yes, now you do got to play with the click track whether you like it
Yeah.
or not. But back in my day, in the late '90s into the early 2000s, if I would have kept 100% live and just playing always with dizzy timing,
Yeah.
and if I go into a studio for the first time,
You don't know
I'm
what
not
you're
gonna be a
doing.
great I'm not gonna be a great musician, because you got to play with the click track. So
Yeah.
I'm blessed with having like a 50-50 situation where, yes, I've experimented in the studios. I also play live. But let me just give you the side thing now.
Sure.
When I was young, this was somewhere in the late '90s, younger in the late '90s. I 2 tracks wasn't in my mind, or 4-track recorder. Right, this is before my friends kind of like had a studio.
Right.
I would record instruments on the cassette tape,
Yep.
press record, and then kind of rotate the tapes. I had 2 cassette tapes at home, and then my dad's bass amp was my studio monitor speaker. So that's how I would kind of hear. I had things in the cassette tape, and I would go around showing my friends this, and
So
this is
cool.
around the same. This was around the same time that my friends actually convinced the home church to invest in a studio and buy equipment, and that's where I kind of like went into that phase of recording in a better setup. But yeah, I nothing ever stopped me from creating ideas, but that was always in my mind. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yep.
And so, but yeah, so being able to record and also play live was something that I had in my life, and to this day I do the same thing. I'm always playing live. I don't reject live gigs. I only
Yeah.
reject the bad quality ones,
Sure.
but the good ones that do come by, I try to hold on to it, and I try to play it, because I don't want to lose that. And people can
Yeah.
lose that. People can lose that. If you're always in the studio, and I feel it, man. I have a key. My controller is here. My keyboard controller is
Yeah.
flushed into the table. I'll turn on the piano on VST and I'll just play, you know. And but yeah, so
Absolutely, man. Like I honestly, it's so amazing that you said it all like that because I have a very, very similar story. Maybe, um, a little bit different, but pretty
yeah,
much the same idea of my parents were musical as well, and sort of we had a music room growing up, so I had a little 4-track. I've actually got it here. I've got to make an episode with it or something. And it was just
yeah,
like make do with what you had, and it was bouncing 3 tracks onto the 4th and then continue, and it would degrade every time, and then you'd get warp, and you'd have to punch in manually, and things like that.
correct,
It's
yeah,
all of that stuff, and learning about how it all worked
yeah,
helped me translate to live and
mm-hmm,
then back again. And it's now I've ended up in the studio again as well. So
yeah,
it's funny how it all completely overlaps. And it seems like every person I speak to has the same experience with that. And it's really, really awesome and beautiful that,
yeah, yeah,
everyone appreciates all of it because it's not just one thing. It's many
right.
things.
You know,
It's really cool.
there's people that are blessed. There's different blessings in our lives, but there's people that are blessed with focusing on one thing
Sure.
in
Yeah.
in the music. I know a few people that are percussionists and they just do that percussion stuff. You know, they're on tour, whatever, and they play. They're just focusing on that instrument. They don't have to
Yeah.
do what, for example, what I have to do is a bunch of things to survive and to try to make a living here as
Yeah,
a
that's right.
musician. You know, it has its challenges.
Absolutely.
When we compare ourselves with people that actually work for production houses and stuff like that, you know, I'm totally like independent. You know,
Yep.
and
Same as me.
so it's like you know, if I don't go out there and do something, I'm not gonna eat. You know, so I gotta always on that hustle grind but also make time for the creative side. You know, and like this,
Yes.
what we're doing right now is part of what we do because this allows us to kind of network. And, you know, down the line, I always believe that, you know, connections always kind of lead to something in the future.
Totally.
And, but yeah, so, you know, it's a privilege to do what I do in my life personally. And you know, I wake up every day just being grateful to be able to kind of do something and you know with this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. It's awesome. It's really
Yeah,
good to see.
yeah,
I think, a lot of people sort of get trapped with the glamorous side of it all and all that. But honestly, it's about realizing that need in yourself to like want to make something cool, for yourself first,
yeah,
and then the rest of the world. Instead of there's a magic in that. And I think that's really cool, like that you've followed your dream there and you've achieved it in that sense. So it's it doesn't have
right,
to
right.
be the highest thing for it to be awesome and worth it and amazing for us. So I'm in the same boat, honestly. It is a hustle and a grind every single day, and
Yeah,
sometimes it doesn't work so well. Sometimes I go, I've got to figure out how I'm gonna make this work, and then
right,
there have been a few times where I've gone, should I just get a normal job like everyone tells me to do? And then I
right,
realize, no, that would be a mistake because I love this and I'm going to do everything I can to make this work, even on my bad days. I don't know if I could say the same thing for something else if I didn't
right,
care about it. That's a dead
right, right.
end. This is not a dead end. So I feel like that's super worth it for any
No,
creatives to
it's not.
hear,
Yeah,
you know?
you know the good thing about life in 2025 is that I truly believe that we also have to kind of me personally. The older I get is like I need the older you get, you kind of think about your income. It's like, okay, so I'm doing this as my core thing, but eventually I want to develop some other type of streaming income where,
Yeah.
something that's not going to require you to do labor, stuff like that, but
Yeah.
something that can be working for you while you do other things. And these
Yeah.
are things that usually come to you as you get older, not when you're younger, you just want to play, but
That's right.
something that kind of will pay dividends
Yeah, the
in the
passive
future.
income thing. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
worth
So
considering as well. I suppose that's a part of it, But I suppose as long as you love what you're doing, then you're on the right track. Your Dolby Atmos thing, where does that enter your story?
oh man, the Dolby Atmos story.
Let's go.
Okay, so it's a little roller coaster for me
Awesome.
because as I was once looking at it, as many people look at it right now, with fear.
Sure.
You know, oh no, it costs $10,000, $20,000, and I was working with this mastering engineer that did not support that at all, and so it was a lot of negativity going on.
Sure.
Because I was working on this project with Jake Jackson from Air Studios in London. I did a rescore of the Prince of Egypt song, and
Oh, wow.
so as Jake Jackson, a great mixer, he was offering me a 5.1 mix because he usually does stereo and he also offers 5.1.
Right.
But at that time, I didn't know what I would do with a 5.1. Okay, so let's forget about Atmos, just 5.1.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So
so
is this before Atmos was like released for
yeah,
music?
this was,
Yeah. Okay.
for me, this was back in 2021.
21. Okay. Yep.
21, yeah. So Jake works in film, so 5.1 is something natural.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I spoke to this gentleman, and it was just negative. So I'm like, okay. I mean, I was just asking, you know. And one thing from that point, I kind of had it in the back of my head. And I saw all these videos. Dolby Atmos started popping out little by little from different people.
Yes.
And I'm over here, you know, making soundtracks and doing all these things. I'm already delivering stems, you know. I'm already mixing, you know. And so one day, I decided to kind of Google things and YouTube it. I'm like, can you do Dolby Atmos with headphones with Pro Tools? Because I have Pro Tools already.
Mm-hmm.
How to do Dolby Atmos with headphones? I'm thinking this is probably some stupid search that I'm doing because it doesn't exist. And so I saw a tutorial from Avid. I don't know if it was from Avid or Dolby Labs of a lady explaining how to set it up.
A lot of people ended up doing very similar things, but yeah, look, I think I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, and it's about mixing binaurally. Yeah,
About setting it up too, because you know I had no idea, nothing. You know, this was in 20. I would say between 22 and 23, 2022 and 23. Between those 2 years, I was going in and out.
Atmos music had already been a thing then, so it's like we're into this. It's now possible.
Yeah.
And still a lot of misinformation. A lot of people scared of it. I totally understand.
I started to follow instructions. So I opened up my DAW. I was following what the lady was saying, and I got it to work. So basically, I activate my Dolby Atmos template or the setup through the Dolby Bridge, right? The stereo side of it.
Yeah.
When they first came up with it, I'm still using that template that came with Pro Tools.
Yeah. Okay.
I've enhanced it over time. So I followed the instructions there, and I got it to work, and I started playing around with that. And then I started to do more research. I downloaded the renderer, the trial, and since I was already with Avid as a subscriber,
yeah,
I had a nice discount. I think I got the renderer for $99.
That's cool.
99 or 100 something.
Was this the update one because they had the yeah, so there was the Dolby Atmos production suite, but then there was like the Dolby Atmos renderer, which is like the update from that. I had the same thing. So because there's been multiple versions of this come out as well. Like a lot of people think that Dolby Atmos is just Dolby Atmos, but it's evolving all the time. They're bringing out new ways to do it that integrate with all our stuff. So yeah, absolutely cool.
So I got in. I think I was in the 5.0.
Okay.
Version 5.0, and then it went to 5.1, and now we're at 5.2. It was already kind of the new one with that you didn't have to have the mastering suite.
Yes, yeah. So it's the new
that
renderer.
that was also confusing for me because what the hell do I have to master this? I need to get a master engineer, and I'm like, what the?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I had to like learn that as well. Like, I mean, I suppose all of us had at one point were like, wait, what's the difference between the production suite and the mastering suite? What's the renderer now? Is there even a difference? Of course, and there is. There was a massive difference. But just to quickly tie that up while we're talking about it, the renderer itself, as it exists now, is essentially the production suite, which had like some basic tools mainly for music. The mastering suite was for film and mixing anything really. And then they merged that together so that you had all tools in one application, which is now the Dolby Atmos renderer, and that's what we use today.
Yeah.
Just wanted to tie that up so that it's neatly
Yeah.
there. But continue what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So before that, I wouldn't know what that was. So you just kind of you clarify that because I just when I got it, it was already the complete all-in-one. So
Right.
And so I started playing around with it, and this is so comical, man. This is how I met the lead Atmos engineer from Fab Factory, Ethan.
Okay.
His name is Ethan. I had communicated with Jason LaRocca, one of the mixers there.
Yep.
And he was like, I'm going to forward you to this guy because he's the head guy that can give you a better explanation. I'm like, all right, cool. So the guy was so sweet enough to jump on a call with me. And he started to explain to me. And I'm like, listen, Ethan, I'm having such a hard time trying to get -18 on Dolby and trying to get -18 on binaural. This is at that moment where I was, I was naive at that time.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm like, I cannot get it, And he's like, no, you just get -18 on the Dolby side. You forget about the binaural, just get it. And I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I already had -18 already. I had kind of finalized my mix there. But before I had sent them my MP4, I had somebody master it.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because I had sent it to the guy at -18 already. I already sent it to the guy the way I wanted to sound. So what did that guy do over there? I don't know what he did. He didn't do much. I think he probably added a little bit more bass.
Are you talking about the mastering of Dolby Atmos, the master file?
Yeah, when you do your mixing, and you kind of like tighten things up, anything that goes over the true peak,
Yeah.
If it goes over -18.
So that's what the mastering process tends to be, and so you'd already done that.
I did that already.
Okay.
So because I do everything with the analyzer within the renderer, so
yes,
I pretty much mastered it, and I just sent it to the guy because I was doubting it. I'm like, I don't know what he has to do, so maybe he needs to do something special. But really, there was nothing special to do because I already did everything I had to do. My stems were mastered already. When I put it into the mixing. So I did my thing, and I sent it to Ethan over there, and he was like, "Bro, this sounds really good." And he played it in the big room. I sent you a picture.
Yes.
He was kind enough to put it in the projector, my first mix, and he was like, "Yeah, it sounds good, man." The only thing he told me, he was like, I would just recommend to just add a little bit more size on your objects on top. And then I kept that as a mental template. I think most, being that I was doing it in headphones, also the fear of maybe going too far. So he kind of inspired me, like, oh, just make them a little bit bigger, and everything sounds great. It sounds great in this room. And then I kept the mental template because if he played it in the big room, then nothing's gonna stop me from pursuing more mixes.
Absolutely.
Because if it sounds good over there, where you're talking about, that's like a CIA type of studio there. Nothing that enters there can get leaked because they have a system there that protects everything that's in that studio. And so, and I just kept on going from there and enhancing. This guy that I love to death, he has a YouTube channel. His name is Alex Pro Mix.
Okay.
He's also a great mixer, and through his video, I learned about some settings in the renderer to make things easier. Like if you take your ADM file to a bigger room, for your surrounds and for your objects not to shrink or to lose the feeling. So in the there's a setting there, I forgot where it was, where you can set everything to unity gain, like unity 000, and so that keeps all your intentional mixing the same way in all setups. So from the biggest setup to the smallest setup in regards to Dolby Atmos Studios. not to movie theaters or anything like that.
Right. Yep. Yep.
And so from there I follow those steps, and he was like, make sure it's always -18 below true peak, always keep it there, and I follow those steps, and as I do rigorous QCing here. I'll show you the headphones that I have, and
Cool.
upstairs upstairs I have a sound bar that shoots out Dolby Atmos technology, and I'll put it up against my references, and if it doesn't sound close to my references, I'll come back down here and I'll make adjustments. So you can see me going. I mean, I'm going up and down the steps here, bro.
Yeah. That's dedication.
Until it feels right. If the bottom end doesn't feel close to my reference, I am not delivering it yet.
Yeah.
Until the bottom end feels like my reference, or the high end, or whatever. Of course, things will never sound the same, due to you're talking about these scores that have 10 engineers working on that.
Sure.
and so you're doing it all by yourself.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, so
To help you there's it's never going to sound the same anyway. So I mean, does it matter that much that it's perfectly the same? Probably no. As long as it sounds good and stands up against things to compare evenly, then you're in the right sort of ballpark. But yeah.
So after the initial rocky start to my little journey here, I felt obsessed with this because not everybody's doing it. And so as a composer, and as I'm already making music, I'm already mixing this stuff in stereo. This is something that I want to do because it's the future. You know what I mean? It's where we're there now. We are the future. We're here now. So, and I think that the negative side, where like I was telling you about the purists, the people that no, you gotta have the 714. You gotta have it. It's the only way to do it. And some people are kind of polite, even though they don't agree with headphones. They will say, yeah, if you do it with headphones, yeah, you should go and test it out. Call me. Some people will self-promote themselves.
Sure.
To check their mixes. But honestly, it's worked out for me. And the thought of having a physical setup is always on my mind. I'm not going to lie to you. It's always on my mind. My thing is always coming back to my audio interface, my universal audio. That's pretty much my only analog preamp that I have in there that makes the music sound really good. So for me to either get I'd either get a X16.
Yeah, so same family.
Chain,
yep.
Or change to one of those audio interfaces that already offer that. But then the fear of sound changing.
Look, if you've got something that works the way you're doing it, like I can understand the reluctance to change that and risk it to lose what you've already got. Like, I completely get that. At the same time, though, like I completely agree with you that there's more than one way to do everything, particularly Atmos. And I think people that are saying you have to have speakers, that is coming from, I'm going to say it's an educated opinion based on the fact that it is hard to do if you don't have that, to cross-check in as many possible places as you can. And obviously on speakers is one way to do it, and you can get the discrete, like I've got a 914 here, and it helps a lot to be able to hear exactly where things are. Not a headphone down mix approximating it, but actually they're physically there in the room. So that is valuable. However, as with like anything, any mixing, even in stereo, in like literally anything that we do, it's always, in my experience, it's always more about how well you know the speakers, how well you know the technology, how well you know how to mix for that thing, more than which gear you use to do it. That's always the truth. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if you've mastered the way of doing it in headphones and it works, well, then you've just done that very, very well.
Yeah.
You don't need the speakers then. You know what I mean? It's like it works already.
The secret to this is like what we already do in stereo, using references.
Yeah.
So in my setup, I always have a reference.
Yeah.
and even if I have speakers, I still have references. I have a 2.1 here, so when I'm doing my stereo mixes or whatever, I always turn on the sub to hear it against my reference. Sometimes I'm too bassy, and I'll work with the high pass filter to match it with my references, and then I'm happy. So with the Atmos, I have Apple Music on my computer. I'll set it up for playback in Dolby. These AirPod Maxes sync with the Audio Movers binaural for Apple Music.
Yeah. Okay.
So I could A and B between Apple Music and my mix in Pro Tools. I could
That's
A and
incredible.
B back and forth, and I can also solo each speaker from the binaural render for Apple Music. I can hear.
That's crazy cool to do that. Yeah.
So with the technology, I'm able to kind of see the meters. I can see how my reference sounds. I can see where I'm going. I can hear where I'm going, and and then at the end of mixing, whenever I hit it, I'll have to adjust, the specs, and then I'll check again with another pair of headphones. I'll check my Maxwell's. The Maxwell syncs with the external render, so I can move my head. I could hear what's going on here.
Yeah, which approximates a room, like you're in a real room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can look up and I can hear this, I can hear that, and then it's something that allows me to feel it, and I go upstairs and I'll blast it upstairs, and sometimes the binaural mix with the Apple mix it's not good, and I'll just go back and adjust it. So it's not a perfect mix. What people might think, oh, one shot mix. No, it's not.
Certainly not.
Because I might be doing a binaural mix, but then when I go into the Apple to see how it sounds for Apple Music, it sounds bad. And then I will have to go back and make adjustments, and then go back to my referencing, export it MP4, go upstairs, and whatnot. So
I've talked to a lot of engineers about this thing. When you say one-off mix, no, it's not. Like, you can absolutely change and tweak it, but you're kind of building an average of trying to sound good in as many places as possible, knowing they're different. So it's a moving target. You're never going to get that perfect for everywhere.
I love the way my Atmos sounds in Tidal.
Yeah,
it sounds loud. It sounds louder in Tidal.
Okay.
So it's a different code happening here, opposed to here, to the Apple. You have to kind of have to hard press the headphone and then turn on your spatial, either to head tracking or to still or whatever, and then it pumps up a bit. But I feel like I confirm my mixes more with the binaural opposed to Apple, because if you have a subscription for Tidal, which I think you should, if you don't, just because you can stream Atmos and you can hear the difference between Apple and Tidal. I double check for Tidal. I double check for Apple, which is the reason why I have these audio mover stuff here that allows me to I could even set myself a link and play my mix with the Omnibus 3.0 that they have.
Yes.
So you can actually hear your mix with the objects included.
Wow.
With the Omnibus 3.0, and you can send that to a client. The only thing is, the client needs to have an Apple product, for them to hear this, for them to hear the spatial mix. I love where we are with this, because it's a beautiful thing, man. It will lead to many opportunities for those that are in it right now, because as we evolve, all of this that we're talking about right now is going to change in the future, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be affordable speaker setups that's going to become something that home studios can have, which they're already there. The IK I think it's IK Multimedia. So they're not going to be the only one.
Yeah,
they're not going to be the only ones coming out with this. So there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to kind of like come up with some new products for this. Yes. And I think it's gonna be way better, man.
Totally. Yeah, I completely agree.
It's gonna be way better.
People keep gonna do more things with this as we go forward. But
yeah, it's gonna be better, man. It's gonna be better, and those that are in it right now, they're gonna benefit from that, and it's gonna be something where everybody's gonna have access to that. It's only the question would be, are you into this? Are you willing to come through? Join this community of immersive audio and just do your thing, and
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I told everybody, I'm like, listen, I've met people that are, when I did my when I did the playback in New York City at I think it was the engine audio room in New York City. They were promoting the Dolby Atmos room, and they had a grand opening. And that's where I went. It was part of an AES event, and they played
Right.
my music. Yeah, they played my music. I had sent the ADM file, and the guy that was hosting, he was like, "I'm interested in playing this, the one that you sent me." I'm like, "Oh, okay, great."
Cool.
He must have heard something that he liked. So, I was super nervous, and he invited me to sit in the sweet spot, and I sat in the sweet spot, and I just heard, you saw the video, right? I was holding the video, just like going around the room, and I felt good, to the point where even after that track was played, I was preaching to people about it. I'm like, this is how I did it, if and they were like, man, but I'm scared because I don't have speakers. I'm like, just do it, man. Just just be you got to be obsessed with it. You got to kind of
Yeah.
like understand what the objects are, understand what the bed does for you, like choose. You have your
Absolutely.
settings, use your imagination, and I think that's what Atmos allows us to do, is use our imagination. If you don't have an imagination, you're thinking about it as surround sound, I think
You're gonna
you
fall
might
into
have
the
a
trap. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, you
I
gotta have
agree.
imagination.
I completely agree with that. I think there's this way of talking about that is really talking about, like, I'm so fast in how my mind moves. I feel
Yeah.
like I can never do anything as fast as I can think of it. Atmos almost allows me to do that in a sense. But I think that's why I'm so drawn to it, as someone with ADHD, and just the creative thing is so ingrained into me. I want to make things huge and exciting, and keep up with my brain just going a million miles an hour. And
Yeah.
this feels like it's keeping up with what my vision is. You know what I mean? I've never felt that before. And that's why I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do then. Like Dolby Atmos, I'm going to mix everything in Dolby Atmos. I don't care what the end delivery is. I mix everything in Atmos.
Yeah.
And that's
For
become the way
sure.
I do things. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it's a workflow thing more than a delivery thing. I think a huge thing for you, because like you're not working on speakers again, which is so when I say that, I mean you're in stereo or 2.1, which is like a bass management of the two channels. You're working in that arena most of the time, and then with the headphones, we spoke a little bit before about knowing your system, knowing your technology, and what your intentions are. That matters so much more than which gear you're using to do it, right? I
Yeah.
think that there is one part of it that I heard you talk about, the audio movers stuff. That sounds like the pivotal thing that makes that possible for you to really deep dive into what the binaural sounds like when you solo the wide or the side or wherever. You absolutely need to know what those things are supposed to sound like binaurally to then make decisions and make it accurate. How did you find audio movers, and like, can you take me through that a little bit more? Because that sounds like a really important thing.
Yeah. Audio movers was already part of my workflow for stereo.
Awesome. Okay.
Just sending out the links to my clients, so they would just click on it and they can hear exactly what was coming out of my studio monitors into their headphones or to their systems from their homes.
Yep.
Audio movers just recently came out with the Atmos thing, to be being able to kind of stream it on a link with a combination of the Listen To app
Okay.
and the Omnibus 3.0. They're two separate applications. The Omnibus 3.0 is like a digital patch bay, so
Yes.
you can kind of interconnect different applications, and it's all going to streamline through there. So the beauty of that combination is that if you don't have Omnibus 3.0 and you're trying to send somebody an Atmos mix to hear your objects, you're not going to be able to do it, because you would have to create a 714, 712 mix bus to put the Listen To app in there, and then if you send all your objects to that mix bus as a send, it's static.
Yeah.
You're not gonna hear what your intentions are. So the Omnibus 3, I don't know what the under the hood stuff is, but it allows you to kind of hear what I'm mixing for you, and you can hear me moving the objects.
Wow.
Oh
Okay.
no, oh, I like this up here. Oh, could we do this? How does
That's
it feel
cool.
if you go? So things like that. You have those type of conversations with the people. So I actually use that. I send the link to myself. I'll go upstairs and I'll listen to it to my system upstairs, just to see how it sounds. So that's part of my workflow.
Awesome.
It's kind of like going back and forth, and I can hear it even from here. I would send the link to my phone while Pro Tools is playing the mix, and I'll just click on the link here, and I'll just kind of mess around with whatever I got to mess around with.
Oh wow, that's super cool. All right, well let's move on to your studio. What's some of the stuff that you do use to do this stuff? Like what interface are you using? I think you said it was an Apollo twin before.
Yeah.
Or...
So I have a daisy chain. I have a satellite.
Okay.
Daisy chained into my main audio interface, which is an X6. And then daisy chained into my Apollo twin. Cool. Apollo twin is used as a monitor controller.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So,
of
course. So switch between my mix cube and the other system.
Awesome.
And
yeah, cool.
Yeah, it works beautiful, man. It works beautiful.
That's great. And the X6, is that a 6-channel interface? Is that what that is as well? That daisy chains?
Yeah.
Like ADAT?
Yeah. I could do 5.1 with that.
Great. Awesome. Okay.
So, but if I want to go Atmos, I would have to invest in a 16.
Yes, and that I still think links to the twin as a monitor controller for that. Is that right?
Yeah, I could still daisy chain. So
That's
if
cool.
I get that, I could still daisy chain. The question is, getting that, which is it's expensive, and what do we do with speakers? So there's easy way out for that, and it's a question of, do I want to keep Quested brand? Questeds are not cheap, so it's a matter of what would I want to do with that,
That's right.
And I want, yeah, and it's a thing that I don't want to stress about that right now, because if I do Channel X, for example, if I do, or if I just go full IK multimedia, iLouds around, I don't want to regret that in six months.
That's a good point.
Knowing myself, I would probably regret going with a cheaper brand. If it's like, I invested so much in my 2.1.
Sure. Yeah.
But I have the sub. These speakers are not, $500 each. They're about $1,200 each.
Yeah.
And, I mean, American dollars, and the sub itself is $1,200. So
it's not a small investment. Absolutely.
So these are things that I'm satisfied with. I'm not going to turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to sell this and get another thing.
Yeah, no, you don't want to sacrifice your existing working workflow. Absolutely, right.
So when I think about the Atmos, I'm thinking about my audio interface. I'm thinking about, do I want to get a 16, or do I want to do one of those audio interfaces that are very easy for immersive audio, or should I just keep what I have and just add an audio interface just for Atmos? So these are the conversations that I have with myself. It has to work with the budget and all that stuff.
Oh, all of that. Look, there's so many different things. I've done it before. Like, I've done it twice now.
Yeah.
But this is the one from my room, obviously, here. And look, it was a very small budget. It was like, I want to learn about it. I want to have fun with it. I'm not mixing like world-class everything in this room. I'll go to other rooms for that. So I was always kind of like, what's something that's workable that I can then take that to the next level? It might be the end result sometimes, but it's probably going to be, for anything that's substantial, it will be in another room that I do that. So this is really a pre-mix room that I can do from home.
Right.
That was my take on it, right? So it didn't have to be perfect.
For us, for people, because you have a beautiful setup there. So
thank you.
Your experience is different. But for people like me, for example, one of the major points I want to make here is the motherboard of what we do is the renderer.
It's true.
And what we have today is we can hear an Atmos mix in 2.0 direct.
which is amazing.
I could take off my headphones and play the Atmos mix in my 2.1 here and hear it in 2.0 direct. It's not a fold down. It's a thing where you can, it kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but it's not a fold down. 2.0 is a fold down. And so I can do that. I've done mixes where I've went from the Atmos. I went from Atmos, from stereo to Atmos, but I ended up turning that Atmos into a 2.0 direct and using that as a stereo master, not as the intended one, not as the old stereo. And the only thing I have to do is just adjust the volume. So let's say if I'm working on a classical piece or whatever, usually we want to hit around. And there's really no loudness spec for that because it's classical music.
It's very dynamic.
The dynamics of the piano is enormous. So it's really easy for me to do a 2.0 direct export and use that as a stereo master.
Sure.
I've done that plenty of times already. So for us, we can do all these things with a renderer.
So maybe what you're saying is you don't need the whole system.
You don't really need it, but let's say, for example, if a client tells me I need to be in an Atmos room, then I'm gonna go book one. I'll make a call. I'll put it part of the budget, and I'll say I need a room to bring a client in to either QC because the person wants to physically be in a room. I understand that. I could outsource this. There's no limitation here.
Yeah. No. So you're already in a good spot.
I'm good either way, and so for me to get desperate and buy speakers and just go and then regret it 6 months down because I really want to keep my same brand speakers, that's just a personal preference for me.
Absolutely. A lot of people don't understand if they have an opinion, you got to be able to back it up, and that's a really good way to explain that. If you're getting what you need already, then there's no reason to rush that, and that's kind of the whole point. Like, do what you need to do, and then figure out a way.
Right.
You nailed it. You know what I mean?
It's the same thing with another situation where an artist that wants to come and record with me, but they know, I need options for microphones. Right.
Yeah. It has to be a vintage 47.
So I either call my best friend, hey, I need some of your expensive microphones, or take you to a place where there's a nice amount of microphones to choose from.
Sure. You got options. Doesn't mean you have to go and buy a 47 now.
No, I'm not going to buy a 47.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no way I will. I'd love to have one, but I would not like to buy one.
I have a very small. I could count with one hand how many microphones I have here, and I think they do the job pretty well. So
That's great. What is your selection actually?
My selection, I have the very basic Neumann 102. I have a Aventone C12 modded. I think that's what you guys call it, modded. That's my best friend's microphone. It's a tube mic.
Awesome.
I have the Slate Digital emulation microphone.
Those are great. So you've got everything you need with just that thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, what it's supposed to do, like you could pick these expensive microphones. I still can't tell the difference, but
me either.
But hey, bro, I just pick it, and I try to do my best with gain staging. If I have to compress, which I love. That's why I love UAD as well. I can use the plugins while I'm recording, and not worry about latency and whatever. And so. But yeah, so that's basically and what I mentioned to you before, the SE 2200.
Yes, yeah, very very cool. All of those mics are great mics. They're not like overly expensive, but they're very very usable. Yeah, I have a very modest selection of microphones too, and most of the stuff that I'm using is like really 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 basic. And I've heard people sort of talk about this idea of what's the best mic for the job, the one you have in front of you, and I like that concept. It's just like, well, I'm not going to worry too much about dialing in the perfect thing because by then the idea's gone. It's like I like to have a mic. This one, it's the cheapest thing ever, but I just have it here for podcasting, but also it's just there.
I've heard your episodes, and not once have I said to myself, why does the mic sound bad?
Oh, well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. That's awesome. So it just works. You know, if it works, it works.
It works great, my brother. It's. I've seen many other podcasts, and I cannot tell the difference. You know, I don't think it sounds great. I think what you're doing there in post production, whatever you're doing, it sounds great, man. It's like you said, it's whatever's in front of you, man. And that's how we look, and that's how I look at it here as well. Like whatever's in front of me, you know. I did invest in S1s, 2 S1s, and I have the dock.
That's awesome.
The Avista. So in my studio here, I have what I call my post production, my mixing side. It's on wheels, and my sweet spot is right about where I have the iPad.
Okay.
The symmetry.
Yep.
Symmetrical setting. So I can sit here looking that way. I'll put these on. I'll move my control surface right in front of my. I don't know if you've seen pictures. But I will wheel this over here right in front of my composer desk, and I'll have access to my sweet spot, and I can mix if I want to stay in the middle between the speakers.
That's great.
You know, so you know that I did invest in because I want to feel like this is a personal preference. I want to feel like I'm mixing, and I don't want to feel like I'm mixing on top of my controller keyboard. I like to feel like I'm doing something different when I'm doing production because you're sitting in the same room for many hours. It's like
that's true.
I'm tired. So when I'm pushing faders, I feel really good. I like writing my tracks, automations. I love doing that, and especially when I have the clients on the audio movers, and they're hearing. The way I work is basically when I'm finished a mix, whether it's Atmos or stereo, on both sides. You know, even. I'll have them on the phone with their headphones on. I'll have them on Zoom or on FaceTime, and we're doing adjustments right there. So I'm not sending a master out to them for them to give me notes. I'm like, hey, we're gonna connect. We're gonna do one final pass, and you're gonna tell me what you want to do. So we'll hear the whole track first, and then we're gonna go section by section, linear style, intro, first verse, chorus, second verse. What do you like in the intro? What you want to do? Oh, can we put this up? Sure, let's ride this up, baby. We'll go in there, and I'll automate that sucker right there, and then I'll go right back down, right before it goes to verse 2, and then by the time you know it, that's their mix.
Yeah, you've done it on the fly, like you just did it. That's really valuable, I think, to be able to be quite inspired while you're mixing, specifically during that time. I have a similar approach, but it's a little different. It's so when I'm playing, so for example, if I've got a client here and we're going through things, I don't even sit in the mix position. I let them do that. And I can be tweaking things, and I might be moving plugins or moving faders and things like that. And the idea is that I'm doing quick things. It's not to be the final. It's to give them a sense of we can take an idea and quickly do the idea, and it will work enough. Later on, I might go, okay, so this has already been approved, and now I'm going to go listen clinically and actually see, if there's any problems with it and things like that. And I might tighten up tiny bits, and that's like a critical thing. But it's a different mindset to just quickly doing something on the fly, and they go, yep, that's what I wanted. I'm like, okay, cool, I'm leaving it. I don't touch that. That's it for now. And it's a different, mindset, because if I sit there sort of clinically the whole time doing things, I lose objectivity very, very quickly.
Right.
And I don't know if what their idea is even what I'm doing, or it doesn't translate that way. Do you know what I mean? So it's more about them sitting here, them going, that's it. And I go, all right, let's leave it there, and I'll kind of master it later, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes. That's basically I invest all the hard hours before I reach out to them.
Yeah.
So I'm referencing before I call them. So I would play my reference, and I'll mix and I'll adjust because I want to reach the same volume. I want to reach the same dynamics. So by the time my clients get on the link, they're hearing the master, and we're making adjustments in the master. I'm working that way just because of what I told you before, the deadlines, the deliveries.
Yeah.
I don't have time to kind of mix something and then master it.
Particularly in
So
Dolby Atmos, you don't need to as much. Like, there's the mastering,
yeah,
like sort of thing, the album assembler we sort of like to use for doing that.
right,
Particularly when you're matching multiple songs in an album that have to kind of sound sonically similar, all that sort of stuff. You can
right,
fix your EQs, you can get your QC
right,
stuff there.
yeah,
But look, I like to think of it in the same way that you do as well, where the mix is the thing, and the QC part of it is just like the technical thing that happens after. That's not the same thing as mixing. And in Dolby Atmos particularly, especially for films too, there's like the art and then there's the technical delivery. They're not the same, but they both have to matter. But like I treat them
right.
as different things. So yeah, when you're mixing or when you're doing the thing, like you said, the mastering sound that is like the traditional feel of mastering for like a stereo song,
Yeah,
that happens during the mix. I agree with you.
right, yeah. And by the time we get to that's the hardest part, the stereo mixing and mastering, all of that stuff is the hardest part. By the time you take that to Atmos, it's a playground.
Yeah, it's
You
easy
know,
even. Like I feel like
I
it's
re-
just
I already
fun.
know that the heavy instruments are gonna stay in the bed. To me, the way I do it, I want to anchor everything right there. Hey, stay in the front, and whatever I want to put on objects, I'll just have fun with that. Depending on the genre that I'm working on. And so it just becomes fun after that because the Atmos is a representation. It's not exactly like the stereo master. It's a representation of that stereo because you're kind of taking the stems from that mix from the
Yeah.
tubas
Yep.
and you're dumping it into your Atmos template and then you're mixing from that, and which is two different ways because the way my stereo template allows me to print the stems away from the two bus processing, or I can print the stems with the two bus processing. So
Right.
if you give me somebody stems away from the two bus, it's harder to do. It's harder
I
to
agree.
work because now the person has to match.
I like to bake it
So
in as it was in the stereo. If I'm doing like
yeah,
an archival thing, like the stereo thing exists already, and I've got to now make the Atmos version,
yeah,
I will print everything baked in as where they had it, where they locked it off, and I will continue from there. And it's more of a spatial thing. Although there's people that are like Colt Caparoon have just released a video talking about this. If you're not following Colt Caparoon on YouTube, watch that guy.
right,
He's really awesome. But anyway, he talks about this sort of idea of baking things in sometimes can be what falls flat in the Atmos mix because in stereo we're carving out so much to make it
right,
work in stereo, and
yeah,
and sometimes that's like you've carved it too much. And then when you go to Atmos, you're losing all the energy because you don't need to do that so much. So to get it sounding good in Atmos kind of goes against making it sound good in stereo because they're two different things. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
it's like a thing. I like to think of it as like creatively, I will keep all the reverbs baked in. The EQ and the compression though, I'll probably bypass and do that again in Atmos as it needs to for Atmos. Do you know what
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean? I think that's like the right approach.
Well, that's where you're printing the stems away from the two bus
That's
because
right.
you're not
You
you're
don't
not
need to
you're
do it
not
as
you're not
much. Exactly.
right.
Yeah. Although, yeah. So in terms of like sonic characteristics that have been approved, though, yeah, maybe that's the distinction then, because it's like
Yeah,
that reverb is the one they liked, not any other reverb. Do you know what I mean? So it's like
right,
that tonality, that thing, that's the sound they like. Now we just need to place it somewhere else.
right, yeah.
But without all the breaking it down to make it fit in stereo, we take all that stuff away and start again. Yeah, I actually have had a funny situation where certain composers or musicians in general, I've even had engineers sort of say this kind of idea, where they're going, well, this is what I've created, and it's the stereo reference kind of thing. It's like a score, a cue, for a movie that is in stereo. It was done in stereo.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people refuse to give me stems before because they don't want to lose what the stereo thing is because that's what they made. And I'm like, well,
Wow,
that's a little strange to do that.
never do that.
Exactly right. But the thing is, I think it's just an outdated way of thinking. I tried not to get too frustrated by that because it was like, look, I understand where you're coming from. The stereo thing is what you created, and that's got its balance. But it's only usable in stereo, though, now.
Yeah,
So the
no,
thing
no,
is,
that's not
that's not
good.
how you
No,
make an immersive
no,
movie. Do you know what I mean?
no,
So
exactly.
it didn't
No,
work. It didn't work, and we had some
if
problems, but we fixed it in the end.
at the end of the day, it's the person in charge, and then it's the re-recording mixer that's at the end of it all.
Yeah.
So decisions are made. If you are sending somebody two stems of a score, or four or five stems, you're not giving the person options to kind of keep your music in the scene. And so by us manipulating the stems just in case if somebody decides to put a sound effect after the fact, you know, they recut a scene or whatever, the music
Yeah.
stays the same, but now the music interferes with something important in the scene. The
Exactly.
re-recording mixer needs the stems to either lower a little bit the a
Otherwise, we'll
horn,
turn the whole thing down, and then your music is
or
different anyway.
either that or not use that stem for that side.
Exactly
And so
right.
us composers, us music makers, we want our music to stay, which is the reason why we deliver 10 stems. We deliver, if we know we're working on a heavy film and we know that there's a re-recording mixer at the end waiting for us, I want to deliver as many stems as I want. The question is,
Yeah.
what type of stems you want me to deliver? Sometimes I'll ask, do you want the tuba stems, or do you want, just the aux group stems? Because I have like I work in group stems, so I'll have the multi-tracks.
Yes.
I'll send the multi-tracks into their own groups, and then from there, I have like a processing going on there, and then I'll have a two bus where everything goes into that. So do you want it like my stem? You want the aux group processing, or do you want the two bus? So and that conversation goes, oh, send me the two bus. I want it. I want the intention of your score.
Sure.
And I'll send it, and then the re-recording mixer does his thing. Even if it's being mixed in Atmos, that's another issue. So if you're telling somebody don't mess with my music, what's gonna happen? Like, bro,
It actually makes it like impossible not to mess with it, because we have to make it work in surround for the deliverable.
Yeah.
Movies are surround things, like 5.1 minimum, but now we're doing it in Atmos, so stereo is just not enough to deliver anymore. It's just not.
I'll tell you one thing, bro. The AI situation. If somebody's saying don't touch my stereo, they're gonna go and they're gonna make stems out of that.
And I do. I have to do that sometimes. Yeah.
They're gonna do whatever they have to do.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And that's worse than delivering the stems properly done, because that would be the easiest way to do it properly and keep the quality up, would be obviously to do that. So, I mean, I was going to say as well, like some of the things that I ask for from a composer when I'm mixing a movie, a score into the movie, and the score finally is finished, cool. It's usually towards the end of the project. And, I've got my dialogue in, I've got everything else. My M&E's working, everything's sorted, but now I get my music tracks, and they go, how would you like it? I want to briefly talk about that. So what I like to do is I go, look, give me the group stems. They can be stereo, or if you've mixed it immersively or in surround already, obviously that is helpful as well. But like if you have surround reverbs and stuff already intact, like give me those. The sends, just wait only, that kind of stuff would be awesome. But if not, then the stereo is fine, as long as you give me discrete groups of things. Like I don't need 500 violins. I just need 2 or 3 groups of violins that are doing different things, so I can move that group around and spread it out nicely. That's really all it ends up being. And look, people give me maybe 20 stems maximum. That's fine most of the time, even less sometimes. And that's it sounds great. Like it's the less work I have to do to make it work.
Right.
All intact. And then I'm sort of aiming for that stereo reference to go, well, this is what you made initially. Cool. This is what it's supposed to sound like. And I can use these stems now to approximate that, but within the surround space or Atmos.
Correct. Yeah.
And then it sounds as it should, maintaining your vision, and it works for the film. Like that's just the 100%. That's what we're aiming for. So how do you do that, or what do you usually have to deliver for people to do that?
For movies, it's exactly what you said. If it's a bit different when it's gonna be Atmos, just because you shouldn't be messing around with objects because
Oh,
that's
you're
the
talking
job.
about if it's going to be mixed in Atmos by itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I don't mess with objects. Don't mess with objects. Just like you said, discreet. You want to put your if you put your reverbs in the surrounds, that's fine. You put your left and right. Stay away from the center, and then you do your thing. Don't go put synthesizer stuff swirling around
Yeah.
because it's not going to work because of the Foley or whatever, the dialogue and obviously the effects that you guys had to deal with. You're going to get your stuff rejected. The composer's going to get his stuff rejected, or you're going to have to kind of
Or changed.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
when it comes to that, I just send regular stems, and they do
Yep.
whatever they want. So it's like you have these. I would sometimes also print the reverbs, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't have it. I wouldn't have it baked in, just because.
Yeah, that's actually really helpful to do.
Yeah,
that.
if I know they're gonna do something, if I know who's gonna be working at it, I'll be nice enough and I'll just print the reverbs
Yeah.
separately so they could do whatever they want. I'm not picky like that. I'm good with working and letting the other department do what they do best. In which I've had instances where I did a full score and they used one stem because it felt good for that
Yeah.
scene. So
Yep.
I'm good, bro. Like I'm fine.
Yeah, well, I suppose the whole thing in filmmaking in general, like you're saying that everyone has a department or like a job to do that is adding
Yeah.
towards the ultimate big thing, and no one person does it alone. It's this collaborative thing,
Oh,
and
yeah.
because of that, like if you're too close to your baby, you're part of the project, then I suppose that's destructive to the overall thing.
Right.
Where it's all got to come together. So yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
really good approach that you have there to just
Yeah.
let it go and be whatever it needs to be.
And then when it comes to the soundtrack release, then I do whatever I want.
That's
so
right. That's yours.
It's like, hey, Anthony, if you're interested, do whatever you want, whatever, and I'll do the Atmos mix and I'll have fun with that because
Yeah.
there's no dialogue happening or effects, so I'll just do whatever I want, and that's exactly what we do. So that's why they have
Yeah.
an OST of the film, because the mixer comes back and remixes it for that purpose. So there's a lot of dipping and automation when it comes to the film mixing. So when it comes to the soundtrack stuff, you go back and you kind of like trying to make it sound like a soundtrack, and
Yeah, you
that's-
let it shine as its
and
own thing. Yeah.
yeah, and you do whatever you want. But yeah, so when it comes to Atmos for us, like we shouldn't mess with objects, and I think that's kind of
For
common
re-recording.
sense. Yeah, we don't mess
Yeah.
with that. We don't. That's just too much. For the soundtrack, yes, you could do whatever you want.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting distinction. I think probably it's two different projects or two mindsets of thinking to deliver
Yeah.
both of those, because they really are for different things. Like one is within a movie that then has to match with everything else. Like you said, there's dipping and all kinds of stuff that we do to make the dialogue obviously is the king, and making the story go forward. If not all the parts serve that, then what are we doing? I mean, that's what a movie
Yeah.
is.
Right.
But then once the score can exist on its own in that space, that's when it can shine and be whatever it needs to be on its own, and that's fun. I
Yeah.
love that exists, that we can hear that as well, because
Right.
it's really beautiful. Is there anything else you wanted to just say or plug? Before we finish up.
June 27th of this year, 2025, the full soundtrack suite, the God soundtrack suite, Volume 1 is going to be out.
Cool.
So it's a epic soundtracks of the Bible stories from Genesis all the way to the covenant where God made the promise to Abraham. So these are just like epic soundtracks that kind of represent the Bible stories. It's like any action movie, but I really want to kind of take it to the Bible side because everybody already does fictional and the dragon stuff and the castles and the soldiers. So I wanted to kind of like give titles like, God, and then kicked out of heaven. That's track 2. Wait, Lucifer gets kicked out of heaven. That's where the epic percussion comes in, and
Yeah.
it kind of represents someone in in the medieval times or the gladiator times.
It does very much feel like that. Yeah.
So that's a special project coming out, which is a 10-track album, and so it will be available on all streaming platforms, and Dolby Atmos on Apple Music, Tidal, Amazon Music, and wherever other store has it. But yeah, so that's the most important thing that's coming out for me right now. Aside from that, some musical works that's more of work related things, but my special project is the God Soundtrack Suite Volume 1.
That's epic. Yeah, I have had the privilege to listen to some of it already, and it sounds incredible. So guys, go check that out if you can. And yeah, look, if you want to work with Anthony, we'll put some links up and things like that. I'll attach it to the podcast episode here, so you can find Anthony if you want to work with him. But yeah, man, thank you so much for jumping on. It's been an awesome chat.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Yeah, look, we'll speak more. I've got probably heaps more to say. Maybe we'll do another episode in the future.
Oh, for sure.
Well, thanks so much. I'll speak to you soon, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Stereo, the Dolby Atmos podcast. If you like what you heard, check out some of our other episodes available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Buzzsprout, and YouTube. And be sure to look out for more exciting guests very, very soon. See you there.